Hello, everybody. I am so excited that you could be with us here this morning because we are a part of a group of folks that are working together to write a book. And the book is going to be called Dream Plan Do, the WMI story. And it's going to be published next year as part of our 20th anniversary. And you're all a very big part of that story. So that's why I've asked you guys to become contributing authors. The idea here is that we're going to you're going to write personal narrative stories, your own dream plan do stories. And then we're going to select some of those, in fact, a bunch of them, we hope, that can be in the book that I'm writing about the entire WMI growth and experience. Because you're the most important part of the story, I'm very excited for you to do this. On the webinar today will be Lisa Wincoop from our staff, and Success Eugene, and Maureen Akabane. I almost got it right, Maureen, right? They are part of a committee that I have formed that will help. First, we're going to give you some guidance after we get your first drafts on any suggestions we have. And then ultimately, this committee will be selecting which of the personal narrative stories are included in the book. I will tell you that you can write those stories anywhere from 500 to 1,500 words, and they won't be selected just on the best ones. I wish I could say it would be just the best, but there will be a factor of geographic diversity, gender diversity. We want women and men, and also professional diversity, so that people telling different stories are an important part of the book. I'm not going to speak any more today, although I might interrupt or add a few comments. Our main speaker today is Maureen Akabane, who has a great deal of good professional experience in telling your story. And I'll let Lisa introduce her and Maureen speak to you, but she's here to give us some guidance. Anybody who wants some guidance on how exactly to write your story. I will tell you that our deadline is the first of the year, so it's not very far away. So very shortly, you're going to be hopefully submitting your stories. And then after you submit your stories, we'll be giving you some feedback, some general feedback in terms of should they be revised, or could it be a little better by adding this or that, and so forth. So with that all said, I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa so we can continue with the webinar today.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome, scholars, and welcome, Maureen. We're thrilled to have you part of this team. If any of you happen to have attended the Dream Big conference, you may have met Maureen Amakabene, who was responsible for an excellent workshop in this very topic, telling your story, your personal narrative. And for that reason, Tom has tapped her as being our resident expert storyteller narrative instructor. She is based in Nairobi, Kenya, and she has a proven record of success and accomplishments in building ideas into multinational dollar businesses. Maureen possesses well-developed leadership, negotiation, and communication skills. She's keen on mentorship and girl-child empowerment, and is an award winner for the Tony Elumelu and Women Entrepreneurship for Africa finalist and grant recipient. And we are thrilled that she's joining us and is here to help make your stories as finely crafted as can be. So with that short introduction, I will introduce Maureen and also not say any more. Thank you very much. Good luck, everyone.
Okay, it's 5 o'clock, 5:10 in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm dialing in from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Maureen Amakabane, and as Lisa and Papa Tom have said, I did the session on storytelling in summer this year at the USIU, and it was really, really nice to connect with each and every person who joined the session at the time and even now. So as a committee, first of all, we'd just like to reaffirm that each of your stories is valid and it's very beautifully the way you tell it. And that's one of the things we'd just like to really encourage and emphasize. I do know some individuals have already put in their applications and some individuals are yet to put in their applications, but the more the merrier for us. And today's session was just a session for us to walk through what pretty much we'll be looking at, so that you're able to submit a strong application. Papa, I'm not so sure. Will they be able to resubmit, assuming somebody had submitted and they want to resubmit? Will there be that opportunity?
Yes, they can resubmit. Yes, anybody can submit, and then they'll, after we make comments, they can make changes. We'll work together to make their stories as good as they as they can be.
Awesome. Thanks for that clarification. So the whole idea for today is to just walk you through the elements, and you have any questions, because we would like for you to put in your stories as in the best versions that we are. And in storytelling, we always say the version always comes alive every time you tell it. So the first call for us is the clarion call is to ensure that at least each of you who's on this call and your peers put in the first level of application. And then what myself and Papa Tom and the committee will be doing, we'll really be going through these questions, these stories that you've submitted, and asking you questions. We're not looking for anything perfect. We just want to walk with you through the entire journey. And then eventually, like Papa Tom said, we'll select some of the ones that we move forward with. And it doesn't mean that the ones that don't move forward are not good stories. Each of those stories are really good. So
Can I interrupt, Maureen? Because I want to say one thing that I should have said before. Every story is important to us, and we will select every story that is submitted. When you feel you like it and it's done and perfect, we will be publishing on our website and within our family. So every story will be selected, but we will only choose 20 to 25 that will go in the book. So we want every single story, and every story will be published, but only 20 to 25 will go in the book itself, because that's the maximum amount of words we can put in.
Awesome. So I'll share my screen for a few minutes, and I'll definitely lead the session. And if you have any questions, please drop it on the chat. Drop it on the chat of the screen. So today I just want to share the screen and go to the application page for the ones who have not applied, and for the ones who have already applied. If you go through this session and you feel you want to resubmit your application, that's still very acceptable. So let me do that. Let me just share my screen. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes.
Awesome. So these are your building blocks. So these are the tips that have been put together to guide on how you're going to submit your story as you start your submission. So the whole idea is, for example, just give me a minute. Is it somebody joining the call and it's clicking? Is it clicking on my end only? Okay. All right. So the first thing is to tell your truth. And your truth is very personal to you. This is the place where we want you to explore and just have a deep reflection of this moment of truth that you want to stand by, and then guide us or direct us into where you want us to land. And then allow us, share your emotion, allow us to experience the emotion that you felt at the time you experienced this particular thing, or you experienced this particular example. And some of the ideas is for you to take us back. Take yourself back into that moment that this particular thing or this particular experience happened, and then relive that moment bit by bit, step by step. So for example, if I'm telling a story of how I joined university and how my first day of university was really amazing, I'll go back to that very moment, and then you'll allow us to really experience what you felt. Were you happy? Were you excited? What particular thing excited you? Or what particular thing made you upset? Or what particular thing made you sad? So allow us to experience your emotion the way you actually felt when you are at that very moment the story you're sharing. And then Showing versus telling. That's a very important part of the storytelling. And what we'll be looking at here for you is, would expect you to show us, and using the example that I'm talking about. So I'm sharing a story about my first day of joining university. So then I'll take you to the admission room with me. I'll take you to the admissions desk, and then I'll start sharing. It was sunny. It was a sunny day. I met a lady who looks like this, expressed herself this way, and that kind of a thing. So the difference between me saying, I just walked to the admissions office and I picked my letter and I walked out and then I went to class. That's telling what you did. But showing is allowing us to leave you from the moment you entered the gate of the university to the people that you met, to the people that made you, and what were you feeling at that particular choice. And then share hard choices. What were you struggling with? And this is where is maybe you had this expectation and it didn't turn out the way you were expecting. Or you had this expectation, but it took a longer time for you to achieve, or for you to conquer, or for you to get into your quest. So those are some of the things we'll be looking at. And then begin with a hook. And here is where we always encourage the stories where you just dive us right into the scene, right into the moment that you are actually living in. So for example, it could be, again, using the example of the university. I walked into this university and I was stunned by how the colors looked like, or how it was red. I didn't expect universities to have colored walls, for example. And then put the reader in your shoes. So when you're sharing the story, always have the reader in mind. For example, they connect from a global perspective? Would they connect from a very personal perspective? So here is where we'll be looking out for your choice of words, for example, or maybe just giving us, for example, you want to tell us what you said to somebody, but maybe in Kiswahili. It's okay for you to use that language that you want to use, and then maybe in brackets, paraphrase it in English so that people can also work with you. We don't lose. And I do understand. Sometimes I tell people there's no direct translation. I speak my mother tongue, and then there's Kiswahili and there's English. And there's some words which don't have a direct translation. But then I can say that word in my mother tongue, for example, and then loosely translate it in English, or loosely translate it in a language that the readers will understand. So that's pretty much what we mean when you're saying, put the readers in your shoe. And then use detail, give us descriptions, give us the feelings, give us the colors, activate your 5 senses. This is your feel, your touch, your sight, your smell. So maybe if you had gone for a party and the food was smelling really good and you wanted to dig in, allow us to experience that moment with activate all your 5 senses. And that will start giving you the detail that will come out in the story. If the story is funny, allow us to share the joke. Take us back to that moment. Why was it very funny at that moment? And sometimes, if you just again relive the moment, we'll catch up the humor with you. And then inspire. Look out for an inspiration. What really was the big inspiration in this experience? What was the big inspiration story for this experience? It could be for yourself. It could be you're inspired to take action, inspired to do, inspired to change your mind about something, inspired to take action about something after this particular experience. And then that takes you straight away to the takeaway. What was the biggest lesson, or what did you take away from this particular story? Papa Tom, would you like to plug in at that moment?
I would love to, but you were perfect. You explained it really well. Somebody may have questions, but I thought you did a wonderful job explaining how you would write a great story.
Awesome. So there's a question in the chat. Thank you, Maureen. That's from Charlotte. I think I hope I pronounced your name very well. Please, I'm not quite clear with the point on beginning with a hook. Okay. Charlotte, what do we mean by you beginning with a hook? And this doesn't apply to everybody. It just applies to the story that you want to. You can choose to begin with a hook. And a hook, for example, I want to hook you on the very experience that shocked me about my first day at university. This is a story I'm just making up as an example. So for example, I'm sharing a story about my first day of university, and you're walking the storyteller in this moment. So you're taking us into that journey with you. So I could really start by saying, I had expected black walls, but then I was very surprised to see red and green walls. That was a shocker. You can just go straight in the story and get into a hook. Yeah.
I would just add, you don't always need a hook, but if there's some way that you can be fairly dramatic in making the person want to read on with a sentence or two, that's what I mean by a hook. So I'll give you an example. If you just begin with a tough situation, so you just start with a sentence like, I was unbelievably frightened, or something that makes the reader say, wow, what's going on? I want to know more. That's what I mean by a hook. Something in the first couple sentences that says, there's something interesting here I want to read more on. Just open with a way that creates a desire for the reader to know more.
Yeah. So basically a hook is something that just gets us glued into the story. If most of you watch movies, like think about it like a movie. Before a movie comes out, there's always the trailer. And the trailer of the movie is where they give us the highlights of the moments that really makes us want to now watch that movie. So they'll take us to a very dramatic, high energy scene, or very high adrenaline scene, so that you can get hooked onto the movie, so that you can want to know more. Or in storytelling, sometimes, and I'll give you an example, it was my first year of university, and I just come from a very conservative high school. Actually, that's actually. So for me, my experience was that I'd come from a very conservative high school, which was church-based, and we had all this conservative, we couldn't even show, we had full socks and everything. So my first day of university, I was very surprised to get into university and see people dressed in a skimpy manner. So that can just be something to get the readers glued onto it. So it can be a contrast of what is always like what is expected, and then you just take us into a big revelation. So you're expecting this, and then this doesn't happen. Okay, I see there's other questions on the chat. Fenwala is asking, is there a limit to the number of words that you can use? Yes, there's a limit. And are there specifications about font and size? Papato, would you like to cover on that?
Font size, none of that makes any difference. It'll ultimately be done by the publisher. Words, no less than 500, no more than 1,500. But most stories should be considerably less than 1,500. But that's the absolute limit, 1,500 words.
All right. The next question is, do you need to write the story with introduction, body, climax, then conclusion? Well, pretty much, yes, that can also be a great format. But as you're walking through the introduction, just look at what's your truth? Why is the emotional journey in this? What are you showing us? What are the details you're giving us in the story? And then how then do you build that? There's always a climax. If you just follow that process and you allow the emotions to come out, then definitely there's a takeaway. So the takeaway is ultimately the conclusion. So what do you take away from this experience or from this journey that you've shared with us? There has to be a conclusion.
Remember also that it doesn't have to absolutely follow the format, but we are calling these dream, plan, do personal narratives. So to a large extent, that is a little bit of a format in and of itself. You're talking about an idea, a dream, if you will, and then what you did to execute it, the planning, if you will, and then the doing of it. So that everybody, to a certain extent, should have that dream, plan, do idea in their head as a sort of rough outline.
That's a great inclusion. So the overall theme, you bring in the concept of theme, it should actually be that. Dream, plan, and do. So the stories that you're sharing, and in a few minutes, we'll be going into the story ideas or prompts that you can start working with, but have the theme in mind. This story is a time when you dreamt about this, and then dreamt about that, and then eventually, how did you get it done? So have that theme at the back of your head as you're putting your submission. There are two questions which are similar. Can you elaborate between the difference between showing and telling? Can you elaborate between showing and telling? So like we're saying, to show somebody versus to tell somebody. To tell somebody is to just give a report or an account of what happened. I went to university and I got my admission. And I was I was very surprised in how the administration office looked like. I've told you, I've given an account of what happened on that day and I can move on. Now, showing is you will work with us moment by moment. I walked into the university admissions office, the windows were open, there were other students. It was a very vibrant and lively group. Or vibrant, and there was a lot of activities happening within the admissions office at the university. And then I got into this space and I was very surprised that the walls were red and I was expecting white walls. And this, that. So showing is when you give, and telling is when you just give an account of what happened. And then telling is giving an account. Showing is living moment by moment, allowing the reader to experience that very moment step by step of how you experience. So you relive the experience and then share it with the readers.
Let me give an example. Let's say you walked up to a scene, a horrible scene. Somebody's just been hurt in an accident or killed or something bad. You could say, I was shocked and frightened. Shocked and frightened are telling. A way you show it would be to say, you got to the scene and you say, my throat constricted. I started to shake all over, and tears started to flow down my eyes, flow from my eyes uncontrollably. Both things, one tells that you were scared and shocked, one shows that you were scared and shocked. Now, it's not bad to say that you were scared and shocked, but it's more powerful if you can describe being scared and shocked than telling that you were scared and shocked. That's an example of kind of showing as opposed to telling.
Okay. There's a question on what do you mean by us allowing the reader to be in your shoes? So basically, what we mean by that is you have the reader in mind. And I gave the example, this book will be read from a global context. And maybe I want to share an experience. And within the experience I'm sharing, I'm talking about my traditional meal. For example, in Kenya, we eat a lot of ugali and mboga ya kienyeji. So I might be talking about how I went to the ceremony and I really indulged in this ugali and mboga ya kienyeji. From a global perspective, people may not understand what is ugali and what is mboga ya kienyeji. So for me to put the reader in the mind is have that in mind, that this book is going to be read by people from different parts of the world and predominantly English-speaking people, for example, but the book is going to be read in English. I mean, written in English, and therefore the readers will be English readers. So if I put the reader in my shoes, I'll have the empathy to translate. So I'll say, I went to this wedding, there was a lot of food, and my favorite meal, which was ugali and mboga kienyeji, was plated for me, and I really enjoyed it. If you have the reader in mind, you'll either just put it in bracket and translate it. I enjoyed our traditional meal, which is served at parties, and it is ugali and mboga kienyeji, so that the reader can actually experience that party or that festive with you. Cool. Okay. Somebody is saying they're having network glitches. That's fine. You can have a video off. That's in order. Any other questions around the writing tips before we move to the writing ideas and prompts? Papa Tom, do you have any other comments before we move to the side of
Maureen.
writing and prompts?
I'm good. Thank you, Maureen.
Okay, can 480 words still score, or is it too short? What you can do, if you want to really know, we're not looking for max, there's a maximum, but then what you want to do is you want to look at, have you covered all these tips that we've given you within the outline? So these outline are your building blocks. So there's a journey. Have you shown us, have you given us some details? Have you translated everything that needs to be translated? Have you actually just walked with us? And is there a conclusion at the end of the story? Is there a takeaway at the end of the story? But 480 words, depending on how you narrate, depending on how good you are with expressing yourself, I think you can put in a very strong submission.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay, it's clear. Thank you very much. We now have the central theme, which is dream, plan, and do. And then we are going back to getting our story ideas. So some of the story ideas that you have, it could be about your childhood hero or your childhood mentor who inspired you to dream, plan, and do. That's one of the story prompts. So you can choose, you have the broader theme, and then the sub-theme will be this experience that you had with either a hero or a mentor that made you take action towards a certain direction. So then you can share your experience with your hero or your mentor. The other prompt idea could be an experience that changed you. What is this that you went through in life or in your day-to-day life as a young person that made you, that inspired you to dream, to aspire, and to do something? It could be a gift you received that made you want to give back. It could be something that you saw or encountered that stopped you in your tracks and you can never forget. So those are some of the ideas that you can work with. And this is where the tips usually give you, because you're also looking for maximum words. And most of the time, if you're going to 2 or 3 story ideas, the words would be more, because you still have to give us like an account of each and every experience based on each prompt. So the tip here would be for you to just look at 1 or 2 story ideas that really speak to you, or story tips that really speak to you. And then after that, you start exploring. So for example, you can choose to speak about a childhood hero or a childhood mentor or an experience that changed you. So just craft either of the 2 stories, and then the one that you feel you'll have more meat, let me say, meat or more details in the story and some salty meat, some nice flavor in the story, then that's what you're going to go forward with. But sometimes when you start writing a story, like, what story will I write about? So the prompts are just a guide or a building block for you to be able to try out or experiment in 1 or 2 stories and then move forward with one as a submission.
Can I just add, the writing idea prompts are not, you do not have to use one of these. This is just ideas that Papa Tom came up with. These are things that prompt stories, partly because I have read many of your stories. Many of you have told some version of your story when you did your first application to become a WMI scholar. And I know that these are some of the things that you've told stories about. These are just ideas. Use whatever is your truth, your story is the right story. So this is just an idea to get your mind thinking about the kinds of things that could make a good dream, plan, do personal narrative.
Cool. Stelia, on counting words, do you count letter by word or as a whole? You're counting the words and not the letters in the words. So the is, for example, on counting words, those are 3 words. So you're not counting the letters, but if you're using Word, like the Word document to submit your story, if you just highlight the entire document, down there, whether you, because the application format is on you can choose to either submit as an attachment, you can choose to submit as a copy. It has a way you can just highlight all the text and then it shows you the total word count. So we're not counting the letters, but we're counting the words.
I should also tell you that we're not long. Don't worry about long words or short words or any of that. And honestly, we're not going to throw away a story because it's 5 words too long or 10 words too short or any. We're good. This is a basic guide. Don't go way over 1,500. Don't go way below 500. But this is just a basic guide to give you an idea of a story. So just in terms of pages, about 250 words is in a typed page. So a 500-word story would be about 3 typed pages, and 1,500 words would be about 9 typed pages. That would give you an idea of how long it would be. But it's not literal. You can miss by a little.
Great. If I just wish to find out if it doesn't have to be about your childhood hero, and that's what Papa Tom was saying. Papa Tom is saying that you can these are just prompts. These are 4 prompts. So you can definitely write about a hero you met in adulthood. It doesn't have to be a childhood hero, Charlotte. And then what if I decide to use 2 of the writing ideas and relate them together? As long as you can find a merging point, like we said, it's your truth, and that's what you're aiming for. But you have the writing tips, you have the story prompts, and you're also telling you can still go and explore other ideas that speak to you and can connect with the writing tips. Is it the truth? Does it have an emotional bit? Does it have details or choices that you really had choices that you had to make? Then you can combine the 2. As long as they're within the tips that you're writing about and it's your lived experience and your lived truth, that's definitely welcome. Okay. Can a story be about our personal experiences or of any nature? It is personal experiences. So these are personal stories that we'll be looking out for. It's not a story about the tree. It's a story about maybe how this tree, how did your life go if it was impacted? So these are true personal stories as lived by you.
Right.
Yeah. I hope that answers the question on...
Yeah, you don't want to tell a story of something that happened to somebody else. This should be
Yes.
your own personal journey.
It's your personal journey. And for example, if for example, you're talking about your hero, you're the star in the story and not the other way around.
Right.
Okay. I think we've answered all the questions. Great. So we have the story tips and then we have the writing ideas. So once you go on the page, you click on the submit. And this is what you're going to, this is how the form looks like. So it has your first name, it has your last name, it has your email, it has your details about your WMI, how you're connected to it. And then this is the part I'll say. You can either submit as a copy paste or you can submit as an attachment. So maybe you did this document on a different folder, on a Word document, and then you come and attach it here, and then you can have a photo. So it's pretty straightforward. So very straightforward. Think about the story, go through the application form, and then once you're done, click submit, and then it comes on our end, and then we'll be reviewing this and getting back to you.
I want to just tell the people who have already submitted, while we have read your stories, or at least some of them, there will be no comments or anything back until we get all of them in and the whole committee has read them. So if you've already submitted, you can revise if you want, as we said before, but you're not going to hear back anything until after the whole group is submitted after January 1st.
Okay, that was answered, Charlotte. Do you have any questions, any more questions or comments?
Maureen, I want to say to you, thank you for doing a really wonderful job of explaining this. That's one of the reasons there's probably not so many questions, because I think you've been very straightforward and thorough in explaining to them how to write their story. Just because you've been involved in the Moth program, just take a minute to tell them how, if they wanted to develop this story and for writing, which we're doing here, they could also tell the story orally as well. Just explain that to people.
Awesome. So yes, so personal storytelling, actually, let me not say even storytelling. Personal storytelling is becoming generally acceptable. And I like saying that Africans told a lot of stories, but maybe we just never shared it. So I work for an organization called The Moth, and how we do stories is not, The Moth also has books, but the most of the time, these stories that we craft or we help storytellers develop are stories that will be told live to a live audience. So there'll be no notes. You have a time. So in the Moth format, it's either a 5-minute story, a 10-minute story, or a 15-minute story, depending on where it's going to be taken. So most of the stories, okay, there's a poll that is running. Okay, most of the stories are told on either a podcast, a live stage, or on radio. So pretty much the same principles apply. So there's a solid structure that you follow, which is really you looking at which incident you want to share, which particular incident, and then you start building more or less story prompts, think about a prompt, and then start building the story, and then take us back to the moment. And it's more or less the same things. What was the experience you had? What was the experience you had from you? What was the lived experience that you lived on a day-to-day basis? So mostly for us, what you look out for is a storyteller going through an incident, going through an experience in their life, and then there's a takeaway. There's a change at the end of the story. So every Moth story has a change. Every Moth story has a conflict. Every Moth story has the central person. So there's the central conflict, and then there's the incident that happens to upset and put the storyteller in a conflict, and then the storyteller now narrates us to the conflict of what they experienced, and then at the end of it all, there's a change that you take away from the story. And the change can actually be an internal change, an external change, or a perception, a change of the worldview of how you viewed something or someone. Yeah.
That's very valuable. I've been to Moth presentations and read Moth books, and I will tell you that I commend that program to all of you. I want to also say that if you think about this story and you think about how you want to tell it, you can create a shorter oral version of it that from time to time, when you find yourself speaking about maybe the nonprofit you started or the business that you started, or you have an opportunity to be in church and speak, you may work this story into your story in the way you present whatever it is you want to present. So I commend you to not just think about this as writing this story for us, but as a way of thinking about and saying in just the right way to tell this story. And you'll find it useful in many places in your life.
Yeah, that's a very good point to bring in. Actually, yes. So Papa Tom, that's a very great tip you give in. So you're actually the skill you're going to get even by using this exercise is a skill that you'll be using in a day-to-day life. So for example, in my day-to-day work, sometimes I'm always told, you have 5 minutes to give a speech. I've been able to really incorporate the art of storytelling in giving my speeches. Or sometimes you'll need to do the next application, maybe for the next scholarship or for the next job. What will differentiate you? And one of the things we like to say about storytelling, what is this detail in this story that only you can tell? All of us went to the same university, but what is this experience that I experienced in a way that I only can tell? And that's where the juice of the story is. And this is just to remind you, it could just be your day-to-day experiences. I've listened to more stories. I know somebody who told a story about a blanket, but this blanket was so dear to them So she told it so well that we can just connect with this particular story. So it's always, what is this fine print? And personal stories are just like fingerprints. So it can also be used for your job applications. It can be used for your master's application, your next scholarship application, because everybody will have a story, but how will you present this story in a manner that only you can tell? And then we work with you and you allow us to experience. There's a question in the group. Are personal details needed like sex and others? Are the application points no? Is it? Let me just check the application. Let me just reshare the application form.
Yes, let me also, while she's getting the application for, tell you that Success, who's on this call, who's communicated with all of you, is the staff coordination. She's the staff contact for this whole program. So if any of you have any questions and you want to reach out to me or to Success, you can do that. She'll keep us coordinated as we move through this process.
So no, all you need from the form is your first name, your last name, your email, how you're connected to WMI, and then you submit your story. That is it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think Papa Tom had also clarified, of course, while we're selecting the stories that we move forward, we'll read all the stories. Those are some of the things, and I'm assuming sex here is gender. So those are some of the things that we'll also be looking at in terms of diversity.
Okay, I think we're done. Success, I think you can turn us off or bring us to the end of this if you need to. Maybe you can even show up and show everybody your face for a second. I know you're not gonna have good connection, but there she is. So I introduced you. I told you she's your contact if you're in trouble or having trouble loading it or anything like that. She or Fred, who's also on our staff, will make sure we get your story. So this has been a really great presentation today. I can't wait to get all these stories after the first of the year. It will be my New Year's gift to have these stories and be able to read them.
So I'm expecting to see over 20 applications because we are 31 on this call, 31 minus 5. I'm not very good at mental arithmetic, but I know that's over 20. So I'm expecting to see more than 20 applications. So make sure you tell your friend. So the person who you know and was not on this call, when Success shares the video, the recording, please share and then remind them to apply. Let it be a snowball effect.
Thank you for that, Maureen. We do have 91 or 94, I forget, somewhere in the 90s actually signed up. Now, we don't know if everybody's got to actually do the work and do the story now, but I'm hoping for a whole bunch because I think this is a very valuable exercise for all of us to do.
Yes, it is. I'm really looking forward to reading more stories. And of course, just like mentioned earlier, you can still resubmit your stories. It's not a problem. We are not going to, once you resubmit, we'll use the last one you submitted to, add to the book. And that's what we'll go through. So thank you so much for attending and we'll keep communicating with you all. For the polls, yes, I see that the majority says we have a WhatsApp group and that has been very efficient for communication. So we're going to create that as soon as we can, since the majority wants that to happen. So we'll use that WhatsApp platform for communication moving forward. Thank you all so much. Lisa, any last words before we sign off?
No, just send in your stories. This is a great, welcoming, supportive group. We already know some of you, your writing, as Tom said, from your applications, and this will be an excellent opportunity to put everyone has their own story, put it to paper and send it in. And that's all. We wish you all a happy new year and we'll have a lot going on in January with your submissions.
I learned something from Maureen today, and that is I love to tell stories. Anybody who knows me knows that I work stories into anytime I speak. And that, but courtesy of Maureen, I figured I must be part African. That must be why.
Yeah.
Because Africans love to tell stories, And Papa Tom loves to tell stories.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening and good morning from wherever you are. See you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.